Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Huncho, back at you again with another video. And so today we're going to cover the ongoing trial of the murder of Roberts Buncis. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with Roberts, he was a 12-year-old schoolboy who had been killed after his body was found on some land in Alcorn Green in the Fishtoft area of Boston on the 12th of December last year, sadly just 2 days before his 13th birthday. We did cover this story when it broke, but for anyone who doesn't know, a 14-year-old schoolboy is currently on trial where he denies murdering Roberts. So let's jump straight into this one and have a look what the prosecution alleged to have happened so far. And remember, anything I do say moving forward is all just alleged because it's an ongoing trial, and due to legal reasons we don't currently have this 14-year-old boy's name. So in court, the prosecution would come out to say that Roberts had been subjected to a brutal knife attack after he was lured out of his home in the early hours the 12th of December 2020. It would then be at around 10 AM he was found on a pathway in Fishtoft. Given a somewhat background into the events leading up to the murder, Mary Lauren, prosecuting, would go on to explain that Roberts and this 14-year-old boy had apparently been friends and were a part of the same Facebook Messenger group. Earlier messages between the pair would go on to appear that this older boy was encouraging Roberts to sell drugs for him and had also discussed with another person whether Roberts would snitch. Those encouraging messages go as follows. The boy on trial says, quote, "We're getting a 3.5 to sell in a week. See if you can handle it," to which Roberts replied, "Alright, that sounds easy." Other messages would go on to read that Roberts would keep the money from the first deal for trusting them, and thereafter he would get 15% of what was made. The prosecution would go on to tell the jury that the 14-year-old boy and another teenager had previously discussed attacking another boy who was accused of being a snitch and was allegedly attacked as he waited at a bus stop in an incident that went down 5 days before Roberts' death. Talking of messages exchanged around that time, the prosecution would go on to describe the boy on trial as having a tendency towards gracious violence with no significant trigger. After this attack went down, another boy who had been involved in that attack messaged the 14-year-old boy and said, "Let's hope Rob doesn't snitch," with him replying, "Rob's a liability," which was met with the response, "If he snitch, smack time." Later on that day, the teen had messaged the 14-year-old boy saying, quote, "Rob's dead. Countdown 7 days. 1 hour, 8 minutes, 12 seconds, with a countdown ending at midnight on December 13th, 2020. The prosecution would go on to tell the jury just days after the concern was raised that Roberts was a snitch, he was killed by the defendant. Talking of the morning of the murder, it was said that a meeting had been set up by the accused teenager and Roberts after he was promised £50 to move a bag. The first message starts off by this 14-year-old offering him £50 to, quote, "move something," to which Roberts replied, "Am I moving a body?" and then the 14-year-old replying, "No, a bag." At around 2:25 AM, the 14-year-old would go on to message another boy separately saying it's happening, with the prosecution going on to say that the defendant knows what's about to go down, but Roberts is none the wiser. At some point after these messages are sent in the early hours of the morning, Roberts is picked up on CCTV to attend this arranged meeting at the Woodland, where he would later go on to be found dead. The court isn't told of what happens next, but all we do know is that Roberts had been subjected to a brutal knife attack. Describing his injuries, the prosecution said that his head, back, neck, torso, leg and arms had all been stabbed, resulting in his death. The jury would go on to be told that one of the injuries to his hands was thought to have been an attempt to cut it off, and the knife used in the attack had the tip missing. This was because it was found fully lodged into Roberts' skull. It's thought that this attack was prolonged and Roberts would have suffered a slow, painful death. After the attack went down, Roberts' friend had tried to contact him the following day, asking him if he wanted to meet up, but by then he had died. It was then he messaged this 14-year-old boy who's on trial, asking him what he did, to which he responded, things went wrong. It wasn't supposed to go down like this. Eventually, it was messages found on Roberts' phone that led to the 14-year-old being the prime suspect once his body was discovered, and in turn a search was done of his home and garden. The search proved fruitful for police because in one of the pots in the garden, a knife was found with the blood of Roberts and this 14-year-old boy. Also found was a Nike top that had been partially burned, some latex gloves which had the 14-year-old's blood on it, and the blood actually came from a big stab wound found on his hand. Robert's DNA was also found on those gloves. And that's everything we know so far in regards to this trial. Of course, more information will come out because the trial is expected to last a few weeks. Of course, as it stands right now, this is the main information to come out. There will be little bits and bobs, but I'll more than likely do a follow-up video once the trial is wrapped up, and then we can get everything then. As it stands right now though, I won't give my own commentary because again, it is an ongoing trial, so we'll leave this one here, and if we do get any updates surrounding this, of course, I'm going to keep you guys posted on this one. But let me know what you guys think of this down in the comment section below. Give the video a little like, and if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Huncho, and I'm out.